When Keanu Reeves stopped by a McDonald's for a quiet moment alone, he never expected to leave with a life forever changed. But when a frightened boy with a broken toy whispered something chilling into his ear, Keanu knew he couldn't walk away. What happened next exposed a dangerous truth, and transformed a simple meal into a heroic rescue. Before we begin, what's one thing you admire most about Keanu Reeves? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, because today's story is one that proves humanity still exists. Keanu Reeves sat quietly inside a McDonald's in downtown Los Angeles, enjoying a rare, peaceful moment. The chaos of fame felt far away, replaced by the simple comfort of a burger and fries. But then, a 5-year-old boy walked up to him, clutching a broken toy car, and leaned in to whisper something into his ear. Whatever he said made Keanu freeze, his face turned pale, and without a second thought, he pulled out his phone and dialed 911. What happened next would deeply move everyone who heard the story. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from, and if you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel. Because tomorrow, another special story is waiting for you. It was a warm Sunday afternoon in Los Angeles. The sun hung high in a crystal-clear sky, its golden light reflecting off the Hollywood sign. Keanu Reeves was driving through the city, having just finished volunteering at a charity event for children in need. He had spent several hours there, donating time, energy, and kindness to a cause he deeply cared about. Tired but content, Keanu decided to take a detour. Rather than heading home or stopping by an upscale restaurant, he pulled into the parking lot of a local McDonald's. Something about the ordinary appealed to him. These moments, quiet, unannounced, gave him peace. Inside, the place was lively but warm. Families gathered at tables, kids laughed in the play area, and the smell of fresh fries and sizzling patties filled the air. Keanu entered in a black t-shirt and sunglasses, keeping his appearance low-key. He ordered a simple meal and made his way to a quiet corner, away from the crowds. Turning off his phone, he allowed himself a rare break, not just from work, but from the noise of fame. He ate slowly, observing the people around him. Then something caught his attention, a small boy sitting nearby, staring at him. The child had tousled blonde hair and wore a faded blue shirt. Clutched tightly in his little hands was a broken toy car. There was something about the way he held it, like it was his most treasured possession, that struck Keanu. He smiled gently at the boy, then returned to his meal. But the boy didn't stop looking. It was as if he was gathering courage. At the same table sat a tall, sharply dressed man in a spotless suit. His expression was cold, rigid. He appeared to be on a phone call, barely glancing at the child. Yet whenever the boy moved, the man's eyes flashed with irritation. Keanu noticed the tension. The contrast between the boy and the man was jarring. While the child appeared small and uncertain, the man radiated control, even dominance. Minutes passed. The boy grew increasingly restless. Then, unexpectedly, he climbed down from his chair, still gripping the toy car. With hesitant steps, he began walking toward Keanu. The entire restaurant seemed to quiet as the moment unfolded. Keanu set down his food and turned fully toward the boy, sensing that something was wrong. The boy stopped at his table. His eyes were wide, filled with fear and something else, desperation, perhaps. His small body trembled as he leaned closer and whispered softly into Keanu's ear. Whatever the boy said made Keanu's eyes widen. But before he could respond, the man at the table stood abruptly. He had noticed the boy was no longer by his side. His sharp gaze locked onto Keanu, filled with something menacing. He walked over, slowly, adjusting his suit with measured movements. Keanu stayed composed but alert. Something in his gut told him that this was no random encounter, and whatever was happening was bigger than it seemed. The man arrived, standing close now. His smile was forced, eyes cold. "Sorry if he's bothering you," he said. "Ethan gets a bit too curious sometimes." Keanu remained calm. He had spent years learning how to read people, and everything about this man screamed warning. "No bother at all," he said with a relaxed smile. "He was just showing me his toy car. It looks broken, but clearly means a lot to him. The man's smile didn't move. Yes, he's quite attached to it, he said tightly, then extended a hand toward the boy. Come on, Ethan. Let's go. But Ethan took a step back, shifting slightly behind Keanu. The man's expression flickered, the smile faltering. He tried again. I appreciate you keeping him busy, but we've got places to be. He reached toward the boy, but Keanu gently placed a hand on his shoulder. I think Ethan just needs a moment, he said softly. He was starting to tell me about his car. Maybe we can sort it out. A nearby waitress, who had been watching with quiet concern, approached. Everything okay here? She asked, tray in hand. Keanu gave her a calm smile. Actually, could you bring Ethan a drink? He looks like he could use one. She nodded, though her eyes lingered on the suited man before she walked away. The moment she left, Keanu discreetly began typing a message on his phone, a quiet alert to a trusted emergency contact. He wasn't taking any chances. The man noticed the movement. I don't know what you think is going on, he said, voice firmer now, but this is getting out of hand. Keanu's expression remained composed, though there was a sharper edge in his tone now. I'm just helping a boy who seems like he needs someone to listen. Ethan, still holding his toy, finally spoke. His voice was trembling. I don't want to go. Can I stay here? The words were simple, but powerful. The man, now visibly struggling to hold his composure, looked at Keanu. I'd advise you not to get involved. Keanu didn't move. Sometimes, he replied, getting involved is the only choice. The restaurant, filled with the cheerful noise of mealtime chatter, suddenly felt distant to Keanu. Every sound, the hum of conversations, clinking trays, children's laughter, faded behind the weight of the moment. He kept his eyes on Ethan, trying to decipher the reason behind the boy's quiet plea. Ethan stood close, his small hands tightly gripping the broken toy car against his chest, almost as if it were a shield. His glance shifted anxiously toward the table he had come from. The man, now known to Keanu as Mr. Harris, remained seated, eyes fixed on them, phone still in hand, his cold gaze piercing. Keanu lowered himself to the boy's level, keeping his voice soft and gentle. Ethan, it's all right. You can talk to me, he said. The child hesitated. His other hand clutched the hem of his shirt nervously, eyes darting around to make sure no one was listening. I can't say it here, Ethan whispered, barely audible. He'll get mad. Keanu inhaled deeply. He didn't know exactly what was going on, but it was clear the boy was scared, truly scared. Whatever this was, it was serious enough to drive him to approach a stranger for help. I understand, Keanu said reassuringly. You're safe with me. But just then, Harris rose from his seat again. He moved with deliberate calm, adjusting his suit as he approached them with a forced, tight-lipped smile. Excuse me, he said. But Ethan and I really must be leaving. Thanks for keeping him company. Keanu stood slowly, placing himself physically between the boy and Harris. His stance was casual, but his presence was firm. Harris tried to maintain his composure, but the tension in his voice gave him away. Time's a little tight. He's with me, he added, reaching for Ethan. Before Harris could touch the boy, Keanu gently placed a hand on his arm. Maybe appointments can wait a minute, he said coolly. He wanted to talk about his car. Let's let him finish. The waitress returned, tray in hand. Everything okay over here? She asked, eyes narrowing slightly at Harris. All good, Keanu replied with a calm smile. Actually, would you mind bringing Ethan a small drink? She gave a quick nod and a lingering glance at Harris before stepping away again. Keanu seized the brief moment and, without drawing attention, continued texting quietly under the table, a message for help already halfway sent. He didn't want to alarm Ethan or escalate the situation, but time was ticking. Harris, now standing closer, noticed the subtle movements. His voice dropped lower, sharper. Whatever you think is happening, it's not. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Keanu kept his gaze steady. I'm not trying to cause a problem. I'm listening to a boy who needed to speak. Ethan, still tightly clutching his toy, looked up again. His voice trembled. Please. I don't want to leave. That sentence shifted everything. Harris's polite facade faltered for a brief moment. The corners of his mouth twitched, and his jaw tightened. You don't understand what you're getting into, he warned under his breath. Keanu remained composed. Maybe not. But I understand that he's scared. The tension between the two men was thick. Around them, people continued eating, unaware of the silent confrontation unfolding. Ethan stayed close to Keanu, peeking from behind him like a frightened kitten hiding behind a tree. Keanu crouched again, his voice low. Ethan, it's okay. I'm here to help. Can you tell me what's going on? Ethan's head turned slightly. He scanned the room and saw Harris still standing nearby, watching. Fear returned to his face. But after a deep breath, he leaned in, lips close to Keanu's ear. He did something bad to my mom, Ethan murmured. Can you help her? Keanu's body went still. The child's voice, though quiet, carried the weight of a cry for help, the kind that cuts through noise and excuses. There was no time for doubt or delay. I'll help, Keanu said with calm certainty. I promise. Ethan gave a tiny nod, but the fear in his eyes remained. He glanced behind him again, clearly terrified that Harris might have overheard. Harris had returned to his table, phone in hand, still staring. But Keanu saw the subtle changes, the rigid posture, the checking of the phone, the twitch in Harris's jaw. The man was trying to keep control, and losing it by the second. Keanu stood, and just as he did, Harris approached once more. Sorry, Harris said with gritted teeth hidden behind a weak smile. We were just leaving. He reached again for Ethan. Keanu smoothly stepped forward, blocking the way. His words were calm, but firm. He's still telling me about his toy. Maybe give him a moment. Harris's mask of politeness cracked just enough to show what was underneath, frustration, maybe anger. He's with me, he snapped. We have to go. Keanu didn't flinch. Kids need to feel safe. I think that matters more right now than whatever appointment you're headed to. For a moment, Harris's control slipped. But he caught himself and exhaled sharply. Fine. But this is taking too long. He returned to his table, muttering into his phone, his fingers tapping the screen in tense motions. The waitress returned again, this time moving with greater purpose. As she approached, she discreetly slid a folded napkin onto Keanu's table, pretending it was part of her tray. Keanu picked it up and unfolded it casually. The note read, "Police are on their way." Keanu exhaled, barely audibly. It wasn't over, but help was coming. He looked at Ethan and gave a quiet, reassuring nod. Then turned back to Harris, who was now pacing slightly, still watching them from across the room. Keanu kept his voice even. Why don't we all just sit a minute? Let him breathe. Kids just want to be heard. Harris said nothing, but returned to his seat reluctantly, his cold eyes never leaving them. His phone remained pressed to his ear, his mouth barely moving as he whispered into it. Keanu knew now that this was no misunderstanding. It was something real. And time was running short. He leaned in and spoke gently to Ethan again. You said something happened to your mom. Do you know where she is now? Ethan began to answer, but stopped when Harris, at the other table, slammed his hand down. The sharp sound cut through the air. That's enough. Harris growled. This has gone too far. Keanu turned toward him. His voice remained steady, but the edge was clear now. If she's hurt, that makes it everyone's concern. Harris stepped closer, lowering his voice into a snarl. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Keanu kept his eyes locked on Harris. Maybe not. But I know how to stand between someone dangerous and someone vulnerable. He stood fully, shielding Ethan once again. If you want to talk, we can. Or you can wait until the police get here. The restaurant's atmosphere hadn't changed for most, but for this corner, time had narrowed down to seconds. Outside, red and blue lights flashed. Two police cruisers pulled up at the entrance. The restaurant's glass doors swung open with a sudden whoosh, and two uniformed police officers stepped inside. The buzz of conversation dulled as a ripple of attention spread across the room. The officers moved with focused precision, scanning their surroundings. The waitress, who had been watching everything unfold, gave a discreet nod toward Keanu's table. Keanu remained standing beside Ethan, his hand resting lightly on the boy's shoulder. Ethan's grip tightened on his toy car, his knuckles pale, his small body trembling under the weight of the moment. Keanu leaned down and whispered gently, "It's all right now. They're here to help." The officers approached, one a tall man with a sharp gaze named Officer Ramirez, and beside him, a composed and observant female officer named Vega. Ramirez was the first to speak, voice measured and steady. "We got a call about a potential concern here," he said, his eyes moving between Keanu, Ethan, and Harris, who sat rigidly at the nearby table. "Can someone explain what's going on?" Harris immediately stood, smoothing his jacket with controlled confidence. "Officers," he began with a smooth, practiced smile, "there must be some confusion. I'm simply here with my son. We were just finishing up our meal." Before they could respond, Keanu stepped forward. "Officers," he said calmly, "I believe you should hear what the boy has to say." Ramirez and Vega exchanged a glance. Vega stepped closer, crouching slightly to meet Ethan at eye level. She gave him a kind smile, her voice soft. "Hi there, I'm Officer Vega. Can you tell me your name?" Ethan hesitated, glancing up at Keanu for reassurance. Keanu gave him an encouraging nod. Slowly, the boy answered, "Ethan." "That's a nice name," Vega replied. "Can you tell us what's going on?" "We're here to make sure you're safe." Ethan's eyes darted toward Harris. The man's polite facade had begun to fracture, his face now tight with restrained anger. "Don't say anything, Ethan. We're leaving," he snapped, stepping forward. But Ramirez raised a hand, blocking his path. "Sir, we're not going anywhere until we understand what's happening here." For the first time, Ethan's voice rang out clearly. He hurt my mom," he said. "He said no one would believe us." The restaurant fell into stunned silence. Vega gently placed her hand on Ethan's arm. "Where's your mom now, Ethan?" "At home," Ethan answered, his voice trembling. "She fell. She said she was fine, but she wasn't." Keanu looked at the officers, his expression grave. "He's afraid to go home. And he's worried about her condition." Ramirez immediately began writing in his notepad. "Do you know the address, Ethan?" The boy nodded slowly, still shaken. "But the door's locked. I don't know how to open it." Keanu turned to Ethan and offered a gentle smile. "We'll take care of that. You're not alone in this." Meanwhile, one of the restaurant staff handed Officer Vega a small black backpack that Harris had left at his table. "He forgot this," she said cautiously. Vega took the bag and opened it with a swift motion. Inside, among ordinary belongings, they found a notebook filled with scribbled plans, observations, and detailed notes. As Ramirez flipped through the pages, his expression darkened. "This guy was watching them," he said. "He was planning to take the boy across state lines." At that moment, Harris, now seated in the back of a patrol car, glared through the window. "You're making a mistake," he shouted. "I didn't do anything wrong." Ramirez ignored him, turning to Keanu. "Let's go. We're heading to the address." Ethan clutched Keanu's hand as they were led to the police vehicle. His toy car still nestled in his other palm, as though it were the only thing connecting him to something familiar. During the ride, Keanu kept him calm with gentle conversation. "Did you know that toy cars are easy to fix? Maybe when this is all done, we'll work on yours together." Ethan looked up and gave the faintest smile. "Do you think my mom is okay?" he asked. Keanu responded sincerely, "We're going to do everything we can to make sure she is." As they approached the quiet street where Ethan lived, the air felt heavier. Ramirez, noticing the front door slightly ajar, signaled to stop. "Stay in the car," he instructed firmly. He and Vega drew their weapons and moved toward the door, stepping cautiously across the porch. Keanu turned to Ethan. "Stay close. We'll wait right here." Inside the dimly lit house, signs of chaos greeted the officers. Furniture overturned, objects shattered, the air still. In the living room, they found a woman unconscious on the floor, a cut on her head. She was barely breathing, but alive. Ramirez called in paramedics immediately. As the medical team arrived and began stabilizing her, Officer Vega showed Keanu and Ethan inside. Ethan broke into tears the moment he saw his mother. "Mommy." Keanu knelt beside him, hand resting gently on the boy's shoulder. "She's going to be all right," he said. "You did the right thing." The paramedics worked quickly. The woman, Sarah, was rushed to the hospital. On the way out, Ethan refused to let go of Keanu's hand. Harris, meanwhile, was being driven away in handcuffs, shouting from the back of the squad car. "I'll sue all of you. You'll see. I'm innocent." But no one listened. Justice had already begun its course. At the hospital, as morning light spilled across the windows, Sarah lay recovering. Monitors beeped softly around her. Ethan stayed by her bedside, holding her hand. Keanu stood silently nearby, his presence a calm anchor. When the doctor entered and announced she would make a full recovery, Keanu smiled. Ethan did too, a genuine smile this time. Later that week, Sarah was discharged. Though her body was healing, her heart was overwhelmed. She turned to Keanu with tearful gratitude. "I don't know what to say." "You saved our lives," she whispered. Keanu replied simply, "I was just passing through." Ethan's the real hero. Ethan hugged his repaired toy car tightly, a small symbol of resilience, and whispered, "Thank you." Inspired by everything that had happened, Keanu found himself unable to walk away from Ethan and Sarah's lives. What had begun as a quiet meal at a fast food restaurant had become a deeply personal turning point. The experience lingered in his mind, especially Ethan's courage. In the days following Sarah's release from the hospital, Keanu made sure she and Ethan had everything they needed. He connected them with a local shelter that offered housing and counseling for survivors of domestic abuse. He personally covered their expenses, but insisted it remain anonymous. For him, this wasn't about praise, it was about helping in silence. Sarah, now safe, began attending support sessions, slowly rebuilding her emotional foundation. Ethan started school again. Though still quiet and cautious, he began smiling more often, slowly trusting the world around him again. Every time Keanu visited, Ethan's face lit up, not because he was a celebrity, but because he had become a friend. A protector. One evening, while sitting with Ethan on the steps of their new home, the boy handed Keanu a small folded piece of paper. "I made this," he said shyly. Keanu unfolded it carefully. On the page was a simple drawing, a man and a boy holding hands, standing beneath a blue sky. Above them, written in crayon, were the words "My hero." Keanu's throat tightened. He smiled and nodded, quietly folding the paper again and placing it in his jacket pocket. "You're braver than most people I know," he said softly. "Asking for help is never easy." A few weeks later, the city police department held a community event to recognize citizens who had shown courage in difficult situations. Among the names on the list was Ethan. During the ceremony, the police chief spoke directly to the audience. Sometimes, heroes are 5 years old. Sometimes, they carry broken toy cars and whispers of truth. And sometimes, they save lives by doing the one thing that takes the most strength, speaking up. Ethan, dressed in a tiny blazer, was called to the front of the stage to receive a small medal inscribed with "Young Hero." As applause filled the hall, Ethan turned and spotted Keanu in the front row. Their eyes met. Instead of words, Ethan simply raised his toy car in the air, the one Keanu had helped him fix. Keanu stood and returned the gesture with a quiet smile. After the ceremony, reporters and guests gathered, trying to talk to Keanu, asking about his involvement, his thoughts, his reasons. But he declined to speak publicly. "This isn't my story," he told them. It's his. Instead of basking in media attention, Keanu quietly pulled aside one of the event organizers and made a donation to the foundation that helped Sarah and Ethan. He asked for nothing in return, no acknowledgement, no plaque, not even a mention of his name. When someone asked why he continued to stay involved, Keanu simply answered, because sometimes people fall through the cracks. If I can help hold one person up, even for a moment, then I'm doing something that matters. That single decision sparked a ripple. Inspired by Keanu's humility and generosity, the local organization expanded its outreach. More families came forward seeking help. Volunteers signed up. Donations increased. The story of Ethan's bravery and the silent kindness of a stranger spread quietly, word by word, heart to heart. Months passed. Ethan and Sarah settled into a peaceful rhythm. The nightmares faded, replaced with laughter, school projects, and bedtime stories. Keanu visited less frequently, giving them space, but he always stayed in touch. On birthdays, holidays, quiet check-ins. One evening, Sarah called him unexpectedly. "Ethan has something to say," she said, passing the phone. The boy's voice came through, a little stronger, a little older. "I'm not scared anymore." Keanu closed his eyes and smiled. The hospital room was filled with soft morning light streaming through the windows, casting gentle patterns on the walls. Sarah lay resting peacefully, her breathing steady, her face calm after days of tension and pain. The monitors beside her beeped softly, a comforting rhythm that echoed the return of safety. Keanu sat in the corner of the room, quietly sipping coffee as Ethan held his mother's hand, watching her with hopeful eyes. When she stirred and slowly opened her eyes, Ethan whispered, "Mom," and her fingers gently squeezed his. A few tears rolled down the boy's face, but this time they weren't from fear, they were from relief. Keanu stood up and approached, placing a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. The doctor entered with a kind smile and said, "She's going to be all right. She just needs rest and care." Those words seemed to lift a great weight off Ethan's small frame. Sarah, weak but conscious, looked over at Keanu and managed to whisper, "Thank you." He smiled softly and said, "You don't need to thank me. He saved you. He's the brave one." Ethan looked up, confused but proud, and Sarah managed a small nod. Over the next few days, the hospital became a place of healing, not just for Sarah's body, but for their hearts as well. Keanu stayed close, helping with paperwork, keeping Ethan company, and bringing meals. He arranged for therapy and safe housing for them once Sarah was discharged. In the background, the investigation into Harris intensified. The notebook found in his bag turned out to be filled with disturbing plans, routes, addresses, and chilling notes about relocating Ethan without a trace. His arrest, thanks to Ethan's bravery, had not only saved Sarah but had potentially stopped an even darker future. A few days later, the police organized a small public event in recognition of Ethan's courage. Officers Ramirez and Vega stood beside the boy as the police chief awarded him with a certificate titled Young Hero of the City. Cameras flashed. Journalists wrote stories. But in that moment, Ethan was only looking for Keanu. He found him standing quietly at the back of the crowd. The boy ran toward him and held up a drawing, crayons, rough lines, but a clear image, a tall man holding hands with a small boy. The words "My Hero" were scrawled on top in big, colorful letters. Keanu crouched, looked at the drawing, and said, "You are the real hero, Ethan. Asking for help, that takes more courage than anything else." The crowd clapped. A few people wiped tears. Sarah, standing nearby, watched the moment with gratitude. In the weeks that followed, Keanu continued to stay in touch. He paid for a new apartment for Sarah and Ethan, arranged for a counselor, and even partnered with a local organization to raise awareness for domestic violence victims. One evening, Keanu sat in a quiet park watching Ethan ride a bicycle, his laughter filling the air as Sarah looked on from a bench. The toy car, now repaired, was tied to the front of the bike with a piece of red string. It had become more than a toy. It was a symbol, a reminder that even broken things could be fixed. Even broken lives could be rebuilt. Keanu smiled to himself, humbled by the fact that a quiet visit to McDonald's had turned into something that changed 3 lives forever. And as the sun dipped low behind the trees, casting golden light across the grass, Keanu stood, slipped on his jacket, and whispered to himself, "Sometimes, the smallest voices carry the loudest truths." He walked away quietly, leaving behind not just a boy and his mother, but a legacy of courage, kindness, and hope.